Johnny's pretty reliable on it.
He is. I mean, I called and told him I'd be there at 9.
Okay.
We're back on the road with Jesse V. We got something really cool to show you guys this morning.
Hey, good morning. I'm driving to No Limit Engineering in Dandridge, Tennessee, and we're gonna pick up the chassis for our yellow and white truck.
Whoa!
Yep.
The one that we did all these burnouts right here in.
So I called Rob back in probably October and told him that we were ready to pull the trigger on a chassis. The decision was made because we kind of got to a limit, so to speak, of how fast my truck could be with stock style geometry up front. You know, we had bolt-on ride-tech suspension and we had revalved the shocks and done heavier spring rates. We did a really big front sway bar, but the geometry still just wasn't what we need it to be. It was time to finally go to a more engineered chassis, and specifically what I'm talking about is the Ackerman is better, the roll center height is better. We won't have to have such a big bar. We're still gonna have a pretty big bar, but
sure.
The truck will stay flat and handle a lot better than my chassis did. My chassis was awesome because it was a huge learning experience. You know, my expectations and knowledge have just changed so much over the past few years that this is kind of the step that we have to take now to go faster is to get that's a really nice S10.
You don't see those very often.
Nope. To go faster, we're just gonna have to change the chassis. So Rob's been building us a ProTech chassis. We've done some upgrades in the form of some of the options that he offers is we can upgrade to SpeedTech AFX spindles, which is a tall spindle that has a C7 hub and bearing assembly in it, and they're a forged spindle, so they're super strong. We set our track width to what we wanted, so Rob built the chassis a little wider than normal. We went with independent rear suspension, so we've done a Winters 10-inch ring independent rear end. So it's quick change rear from Winters, and then it's got Porsche CV shafts, and then it's got C6 Corvette spindles in the back. So then we can set all the toe and camber and really get the rear to work way better than it ever did. So now we're gonna have 750 front springs, 450 back springs, big spline sway bars front and rear. And then the only things that I did not option for Rob to do was no fuel tank. We're gonna put a fuel tank in a different location other than the rear.
No kidding.
Yeah, no fuel tank in the rear.
Very cool. Are you willing to say where you're putting it?
The fuel tank's gonna go under the cab.
Very cool.
This is beeping because you ain't got no seatbelt on. That chassis got a big X inner stiffener, and we've worked with Aftermarket Industries, a fuel component company out of Australia. Our friend Sean Bassett, he's the one that has that carbon fiber body Datsun 240Z that ran Pikes Peak.
Yeah.
So he is the US branch now of AI, so it's fueled by AI. So they're supplying the surge tank or the pump assembly that goes in this tank, and then I drew the tank, gave the dimensions, and I drew the technical drawing that I could draw.
Sure.
Of where that tank's going to go, and it's going to go in the right side of that inner stiffener. So you know, it's got one long side, and then it's kind of got two angled sides,
which we'll see more about.
Yeah, you'll see more about that. Yeah. So I submitted the drawings, and then the engineers in Australia have actually taken the drawings and built the tank. So they're gonna give me the DXF files, and then we're gonna water jet all the pieces and build the tank. So that way the tank can be very low, so that the weight's low and it's, you know, in between the axle center lines, so to promote really good handling. The cab's back from the body shop, it's all painted. All right, y'all, we're at Hoosier Hot Rods. We're about to buy a yellow and white truck. Let's go in here and check out the paint and body. Everybody, this is Ryan. Ryan's from owner of Hoosier Hot Rods, and him and his guys have helped redo the paint and body and fix rust on our trucks. Got a pretty cool Volkswagen in here too. But this is the main reason, these are the main reasons why we kind of started in this project. Was there was some pretty good rust in the bottom of both these bed sides, and they cut the metal out and fixed it for us and blended in all the paint. They actually stayed down below the trim on this bed side. The other side, we fixed a little rust that was right in the top of the wheel well that was starting, and they redid most of that bed side. And then here it is. This is so exciting. If any of you have ever seen this truck in person before, it was some original paint, maybe. I think the hood maybe had some original paint left in it. I had painted the tailgate. I think that this entire cab had been bodyworked and painted back in the day. We have no idea when, but it was starting to get some rust in the bottom of the doors. It was starting to bubble here. It was a good indicator that we needed to get it fixed before this season. So they fixed all that. They actually replaced the whole bottom of the outer skin and inner structure on both sides. Yes. Yeah, okay. And then so painted the bottom of the doors, painted the white. So stayed from here down on the doors at least, and then on the back of the cab. Straightened out some of this stuff. The rust wasn't a big deal on the roof, but there was some bubbles up here in the very front, so they fixed that. And then it had some hail damage in the top of it. They straightened all that out, blocked it, painted the whole top, and this thing is awesome. So today we're dragging it back home, and I've been working on putting the new pedal assembly in. So timing's working out just right that we're gonna be able to get the chassis and take it back, and then I can go ahead and start mocking up the whole truck now.
Yeah, and I know we'll talk about this, you know, as this build series kind of unfolds, but what is the ultimate goal for this truck, or the short-term goal for this truck? When are you trying to have it finished, and what are you trying to have it finished for?
So what is today? Today is January 16th, and I really need to be driving this truck sometime in March.
Looks like we're pulling up to No Limit now, so let's go look at some goodies.
He's down here drinking beer, welding on the pontoon boat one Saturday.
Well, you fit right in over here in Tennessee, drinking beer, welding on a pontoon.
I'm great. I'm okay.
With No Limit Engineering in Dandridge, Tennessee. We're going to show you some stuff today about C10 chassis and the difference in maybe higher performance chassis and whatnot. We've built a lot of trucks and cars in the past, but we're trying to focus on what we're the best at, and that's chassis and suspension development for high performance vehicles.
So we're here at No Limit, and this is the chassis that Rob and his guys have been building for our yellow and white truck. And Rob's going to go over some of the specs and some of the details with us, and introduce you to what this is and why I wanted it so bad.
Well, I was just telling Jesse, you know, fab time takes a while. There's a lot of pieces that go into it, even just building the rails the right shape and everything, but I really had forgot how many changes we made on what we would normally build to get to the concept of what Jesse was after and to make sure everything would fit. Because there's a lot of things on this chassis that are a little different than our off-the-shelf chassis, and it's probably cool for people to see this because we have no problem if the customer calls up and says, hey, I want to buy one of your chassis, but I want this, or I want this. It's fine. We're happy to try to meet those needs. One of Jesse's desires was to use the wheels that he already had. To fit the truck right, that says the wheel mount surface out on the spindle has to be a certain dimension. So our normal front track width would be 61.5, 61.75 right there. So we had, you know, 3+ inches to make up, 1.5-ish per side. So at first you would think, well, we'll make longer A-arms. The problem with that is that to the point when the A-arms start to get too long, you start to lose your roll center, you lose the rate of camber gain. Once we kind of put it into CAD and started working on the track width, the wheel mount surface width, then we had to go back and change everything else to get it right. This upper pivot is 0.9 inches farther out. The lower arm is 1.15 inches longer. The upper, because of the spindle, would have been longer anyways. So it's actually not as long, it's 1.75 inches longer. Using the SpeedTech Extreme Spindle, we have the matched camber gain and roll center that we have in our suspension, using the other components, using the and keeping the track width out.
Trucks are pretty wide, and I run an 11.5-inch wheel, and I've been running a 1/2-inch wheel spacer to get the wheels where they didn't rub in the control arms. And if you look down the wheel, you know, the back of the rotor is almost at the inside of the wheel. You know what I mean? There's a lot of wheel hang, you know, past the hub or wheel mounting surface.
Right.
So I wanted to try to get the wheel mounting surfaces, well, and my theory was that best would be right in the middle, and that's not right.
Well, a zero offset wheel,
well, the scrub, I guess,
doesn't mean that it's zero scrub, right?
Right.
And I don't know, you know, 15, 20 years ago, we started playing around scrub radius, and I had some friends who, you know, I had a fortunate background to work on some GTP car stuff, and guys would work toward the zero scrub radius, and when you got inside, depending on the car and how much downforce there was, when you got inside 1.5 inches or so, the drivers had a lot of problem feeling the tire because it turns, you know, if you have zero scrub radius, you're turning right at the center of the contact patch, so there's the same amount of outside push as inside push.
Okay.
And the turn becomes really easy to do mechanically, right?
So you lose feedback.
So you don't have the feedback.
Okay.
So, you know, everybody was heading towards zero scrub, and then as they got close to that, everybody kind of went, that's not working, and started drifting back. You know, we need 1.5 inch, because you can feel it. Now, if you had a ton of downforce, you'd go more in toward, but we don't have that. Matter of fact, we have it backwards, because you have a brick in the front that's trying to upset the air, which is buffeting the truck.
Yep.
So we need a little more feedback to know what's going on. So I think this is going to work out great for you, man.
So the intent here too was to be able to have the exact same wheel dimension and offset on all four corners. So that I could take the front wheel and put it on the back, vice versa, you know, get a little more life out of the tire.
This combination is going to be pretty awesome.
Well, I'm extremely excited. This is another thing that I'm really excited about.
Me too.
Because I'm really techie and nerdy, and a lot of people know that. So I've been constantly researching and reading and talking to companies that do electric assisted steering. Not to get into that too much or too nerdy, but what we're going to do is we're going to use an electric motor under the dash of the truck that powers the input side of the rack. So now there's no hydraulic assist on the rack gear itself. So that required a custom rack or a different rack than traditional. So this is a manual rack, but now we've beefed up the input side of the rack, because now all the load and all the assist is on this input gear versus the hydraulics assisting this. So Rob helped with that. Rob is the one that got the Woodward rack that we needed.
We trace these down to Woodward, who makes these specifically for boosted column applications, where the rack shaft is really, I mean, this is for a manual rack, it's a pretty fat tube. It may not look that huge, but it's 30% bigger or so than a typical manual rack. And the input shaft is considerably bigger, and the bearing sets are much bigger. The rack shaft is actually hollow.
Okay.
So cut a little bit of weight out of it. But the gear overlap is huge. It's 50% more gear overlap than
you're not going to strip the gear.
A Ford manual or a Fiat manual rack.
Okay.
So you can't hurt this. You can, you know, there's a couple of race bodies. The Australian supercar is one where they no longer allow them to have a power steering pump and fluid.
Yeah, it's extremely flammable too. That's another.
It's dangerous, right? So all those guys have gone to setups like this with a boosted column, and Woodward is the rack that they use. So
Awesome.
We have high hopes, and we've used a couple of them, and they worked out really well. You know, when you get it dialed, you should be on the steering level of the Porsches or something like that, which would be awesome.
Yep. So the company that's helping us is DCE Motorsport out of Mooresville, North Carolina, and they build a ton of electronic power steering systems. They, are in WRC and Indy, and a lot of global motorsport stuff. And then the brain that's going to be in my truck is also the exact same brain that's in a lot of OEs that do autonomous driving. So that is like the most technologically advanced brain that you can get. And my motor actually has a torque input sensor, so that brain knows how hard I've inputted into the system. And then I've got a steering angle sensor, so the ECU will also know like the angle of how far I am, and then they will communicate via CAN. So the steering computer will know everything: throttle position, vehicle speed, everything. So it'll be able to make changes. So if it sees me go high input load, full angle, 0 TPS, the computer knows I just flew off the track, And so I have on my steering wheel a 1 to 5 of assist, and all levels of assist are tunable on my laptop with the software too. So, if I run a very tight autocross versus Road America, there's going to be a different steering feel that I want. So we'll be able to do that on the steering wheel.
That's cool. So another change we made, and we've done this again a few times, is to go to an Ats Spindle. And these are made by Speed Tech, and it's a really nice, high quality part. And what they're designed to use is a Corvette. Sorry, I got my little spacer here. A Corvette unibearing style hub, bolts right in there. Now it's very service friendly. In some ways, of course, it's 3 bolts, you replace the whole thing. You don't pack wheel bearings or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And they're very stable. This assembly allows you to run off-the-shelf Corvette C5, C6 style brakes. Mm-hmm. And it's a little lighter. Now to use this, we have to custom make a steering arm, and I'm sorry I don't have one of those to show you. But I actually have Arnie make the steering arms for me. He mills them out.
Those bolts on here.
Bolts right on the back here, comes up forward. And that helps us set the Ackerman to the wheelbase when we custom make a steering arm. So we keep mentioning Ackerman, and it's really kind of a simple concept, but it's difficult to get right. Let's say you're making a left turn, and I'm going to try to use my hands to show this. You're making a left turn. If both tires turn the same degree, say 30 degrees, that doesn't work too well, because if you drew a circle, the inside tire is going around a shorter circle than the outside tire when the car's making the same corner. So the inside tire has to turn faster than the outside tire to make the same corner without any tire scrub or loss of grip or traction. How do you make the steering setup so that if you turn left, the left side tire turns faster, and if you turn right, the right side tire turns faster? And this all has to be tied in to the wheelbase, because as the wheelbase changes, that changes the arc of how quick the tires need to turn. Interestingly, this was figured out in like the 1500s by a guy that was a wagon master, and he figured out if you could get the inside tire to turn a little faster, they could really cut down on the wooden wagon wheel folded under, right? And that's where it all came from. So this is not new technology, but it's been forgotten, and a lot of guys don't think it's that important in a good handling truck or a good built chassis. But if you drive something that has really great Ackerman, and you just drive that once and then you go back to normal cars and they all suck. This is our typical spindle, a drop spindle that we would put on a chassis like this. And this is a spindle that we have made. This is a no limit spindle. We have the bodies forged. We have all the machine work done. It's a high quality spindle. It's very rigid. It can be set up for OE style calipers, or we trim them off like this to run aftermarket brakes. The difference between this setup and this setup is probably 2.5 pounds in total per side, which doesn't sound huge, but it is unsprung weight. And again, this assembly does allow you to run a wider variety of different style of brakes. So you can get off-the-shelf Corvette brakes, you can get Bear or
Willwood
or Brembo or anything like that. So in racing circles, there may be more used brake component available for this than there is for our spindle here.
One of the big advancements that we saw was cool is that we can run the C7 front hub bearing assembly, and we're going to drill and place a wheel speed sensor in this front hub, or this front spindle. So then it can read wheel speed from, well, now all 4 corners.
Right.
So our ECU that we're using will be able to read wheel speed from all 4 corners, and now we can do traction control. And then if we ever upgraded to the Bosch system, we could feed that information and run anti-lock brakes too. So one of the big things that we've found in truck racing over the past few years is that the faster we want to go, the bigger bar. We keep stepping a little bit and a little bit up.
Right.
This here is a little bigger than what we're going to run.
This is insane.
Yes.
But we've learned, I know like Eric Dwayne is running an 1.5 bar in his 66, the blue and white truck. Corey's running an 1 5/8 or 1 11/16 bar.
I had an 1.5 bar in mine.
And you have an 1.5 bar. So when you pass up an 1.25 inches, you have to get your big boy pants on, really, because instead of having an 1.25 inch 48 spline on the end of the arm, you have an 1 3/4 49 spline. Mm-hmm. And this is huge. But honestly, this bar could be run in the truck, and that's what this big tube up front is for. Is we'll have some Delron bushings that support the bar in this tube, and then the splined arm will come out and connect to the control arms. So as an example of the big sway bar stuff, here's our 1 3/4 inch sway bar carried in a tube, and this is our arm, and we form these out to fit, and then this is our connecting link down to the A-arm. And by moving this link from the outside to the inside, we can change the ratio where it's connected to the arm, which actually kind of tunes the sway bar rate without having to change the bar. We put a 3-inch crossbar in here so that the biggest bar available right now to us is a 2.5 inch diameter bar. I don't think we'd ever run that. It's about 3,000 pounds load rate. So we're going to start off with the 1 5/8 bar that's about 1,100 pounds.
I think we've all kind of started around 450. Like a lot of our standard bars that we were running, when I first started, was 450, and then I went to 600, and then 900, and then now we'll be 1,100. So There's been some pretty big incremental change.
And one of the things that'll do, though, is a lot of guys, you also talk about spring rate. Guys are running, I run 800, 900, 1,000 pound spring rate. Part of that spring rate gain is because the bar isn't big enough. So when you get 1,100 pound bar, you may end up having a 600 pound spring.
Yeah.
And the truck will have more mechanical grip. It'll be freer to grab the little things, but not lean. Mm-hmm. And that's grip that's what we're after, man.
Yep. Yeah, and I kind of went too far in spring rate and then stepped backwards and then went up in bar, and I learned a lot there.
In the middle of the chassis, of course, you have all this trick suspension and everything, and if the chassis flexes front to back, right, it doesn't matter how trick your suspension is or how good your shock is. That always kind of cracks me up. I see guys using really high-end shocks, and we look at the fixtures that they're mounting them to, their chassis mounts and things like that. We know that the chassis is flexing in the shock mount. Why buy the shock? Because you're not using any of it. The shock's only accurate if you're holding one end really still. So to help do that, we build our chassis with this X member. A little different looking than most. I don't put little tubes in and one cross member and things like that. All that stuff flexes too much. We're trying to get rid of the flex. So we wanted a system that we could duplicate over and over and over again that fits into these chassis, allows the exhaust to go through, drive shaft safety loop, our trans mounts bolt into the bottom. It actually lends itself very well to be belly panned for a little aero, which is nice. But really what we're after is a lot of strength. The square bodies actually get 2 additional, we got the X member that goes in here, and then this is the rear cab mount bridge. The cab mounts mount here and here. This is an additional cross member that like regular C10s don't have because their rear body mounts are different. So this is additional stiffening for the chassis. I don't know if you've seen some of our videos online of us bending chassis in our jig to see how rigid they are. But a stock square body chassis will bend 17 or 18 degrees with 1,000 pounds of load. We can twist it 17 or 18 degrees. And these bend about 0.5 degree with 1,000 pounds of load.
Wow.
So when you're talking about the rigid platform to keep the truck, you know, you don't want the doors to rattle, you don't want the bed to look like it's shifted. We want the truck platform to stay solid, stiff, and let the suspension then do all the work and move around. So that, and then of course your suspension mounting points aren't moving around, so they become very accurate. You know, and then we move into the rear section of this chassis, and this is our Irs Design. So the rear rails have to be kicked in, up and pulled narrow, and then we build everything. So we build the cradle section, we build the A-arms, we do everything. And this is designed on a, our typical is a Ford 9-inch carrier with Porsche 934 CVs, out to 33 spline axles, and then to C7 hubs in a C6 upright. Again, 934 Porsche style CVs and 33 spline outers. So it's good for about 1,000 horsepower and just the smoothest ride and the most grip that we could get out of it. These are game changers. I mean, it's definitely a price to go with it, but this is pretty awesome stuff. And you guys are looking at this going, well, there's nothing here. Well, most of it's here. And we have another truck with a setup like this we're gonna do. Jesse, again, wanted to step up beyond the normal of our 9-inch carrier and use a Winters quick change custom built for an IRS.
One of our reasons for changing to a chassis different than what we've had was, you know, more mechanical grip. You know, the front end on my truck needed huge improvement. And then if we were gonna improve there, we needed to get as much mechanical grip in the rear as we could possibly get. And you know, there's just 100 different improvements here, you know, from being able to have camber on the rear tire to any toe change. And the reason why we finally went to the Winters quick change is because we're going to run a sequential transmission that's got a final 6 gear of 1-to-1 that's going to be really close ratio. And we wanted to be able to change our final drive ratios depending on what track that we were going to go to. And then here too, this isn't, the weight doesn't matter like it did in my rear end.
Right.
You know, so now the additional weight of the Winters and all this stuff is more of a benefit now because it's sprung weight.
Right, because everything in the center, the rear differential, the gear set, the yoke, everything is now bolted to the chassis, the frame. It's all sprung weight.
Yeah.
So the only thing that's unsprung weight is out here.
Yeah.
So the weight percentages, which is a big problem in a truck, have been hugely improved by putting IRS in it. Jesse's talking about a quick change and the advantages of the quick change and the gearing advantages of a quick change. And I'm a firm believer in that. And I have proof that that's the way to do it. So there is a truck that has been beating everybody for 10 years or so. And one of the advantages, if you've ever seen me race that red thing back there, is that once I've been around the course a couple of times, you will probably never see me shift again because I've gone back to the trailer and changed the gear ratio, and I've gear matched the truck's engine right to that track. So at the longest, you know, straightaway, I'm just banging the rev limiter, and at the shortest corner, I'm still in the torque curve. And shifting takes time. So if you can gear match to a track where you don't have to shift, maybe it's a couple tenths of a second. But you know, in a lot of matches, what's the win to lose? You know, first to second is a few hundreds. So if you can avoid one shift,
Yeah.
it's well worth it. I think this is going to give you a big advantage. This truck will probably be one of the highest level of technology, state of the art, when it's together, that's out there right now.
I'm trying to talk Robbie and Jesse into all of us going to King's Mountain. Told me it's something to see.
Oh, it's cool.
An experience.
That's good. Look at the balance. Better now. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to grab my straps up back.
You want this in the truck?
Yeah. Johnny's a riot, man.
Oh yeah.
He cracks me up. Last time I came here, he had his Glock 19 right here in his bibs. I said, man,
He's a wild man.
you're carrying, I don't know how concealed it is.
Yeah. All right, Jesse. So chassis on the trailer, man. What's next?
Everything else. We got to make it back to Illinois, and Dylan's got a room made in the shop, and I'm gonna mock up and build and put the fuel tank in. Well, gosh, we got to go to Texas.
Yeah.
Next weekend
What are we going to Texas for?
to pick up the engine from Don Hardy.
Oh, let's just leave it at that. How about that?
Yeah. So
All
we need the motor, and then we need the trans from Bowler, and the fuel tank, and then I think I got everything else.
Yeah.
Everything else is handled.
So
The next time you're gonna see me and him, we're gonna have cowboy hats on.
we're going to Texas. We'll see you guys there.
So that's the shape of the tank.
Quarter all the way around it.
But the tank's tall, you know, to build
And I
higher.
also have to take into consideration that we're gonna, bend, break 90 mounts and weld to the side so that it can, mount to the bottom of the chassis. So this is perfect with a 1/4 inch all the way around it. And what it is 30 across the bottom, 6 1/2, 4 1/8, 18 1/2, 9 1/4, and 4. So these are a little bit different than what's happening right now. But the degrees are the same, 121 and 49.
Welcome to, well, Texas. We are here with Paul Treadwell, Jesse Vaughn, Dill Joe from Level 7, and we're in Texas doing some cool stuff today. So we're at Paul's Ranch, 3T Ranch in Abilene, Texas, and we're actually gonna make a small trip and head up to a place that I think you guys are gonna just really love to see inside and talk to a man that you're probably interested in hearing from. So we're gonna get on the road, but first we're gonna drop in some context and some narrative as to why we're here and how all this is taking shape. So let's cut to that, and then we'll catch up with you on the road.
Yes.
Dylan, what's up?
What's up, man?
Where are we going?
Going to the lookout point.
Ooh, lookout point. I can't fit my hat in the truck. Number one rule, take off your cowboy hat before you get in the truck. Morning, Paul.
Morning, Rob.
Pressure weight is full because there's moisture in the air. Yeah, you can see the lake now.
Dylan, if you don't mind, tell us if we look stupid.
I will absolutely do that.
Abnormally stupid, yeah.
normally stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the kind of stupid you're looking for.
Yeah, the kind of silly. Please don't fall off of that.
I won't. If I won't, I'll do it quietly.
It's just
All right, guys, so Jesse's already throwing 6 shooters out here on us, and you can tell we're in Texas because me and Jesse got our hats on.
we built our yellow and white truck, 5 or 6 years ago.
So today we work on our shop truck C10 and we give you a little backstory on where we've been so far with this truck.
We wanted it to be, symbolic of Level 7, and it's drawn a lot of people to our social media and to know who we are. And Paul was one of those people that's followed us for a really long
On
time.
our first attempt at a professional episode, my wife makes me choose what we eat for dinner. You hear our kids scream in the background, a dog may run through, our phones go off, and we talk a little bit about our shop truck.
Probably over the past couple years, we would DM each other randomly, about the truck, or you sent me a picture of some guns one time. We talked about a few
Things
things.
that you're interested in,
Yeah.
mutually interested in.
Absolutely. He had messaged me one night saying, did you find anybody to build another race truck? And I said, oh no, but that's few and far between. What I really am passionate about is not exactly what everybody wants to build. And, and we kicked back a few messages that night. The next day, Paul had texted me a video message, just saying thanks for the conversation last night, and if you're ever interested in building a race truck, I would be interested. And so I said, well, just give me a call sometime. Just call the shop and we'll talk. The next conversation we had was, well, I'm interested in that, but I don't know if it's on the table, but I'm really interested in the yellow and white truck. I replied, that's my truck.
Yeah, he said that's off limits.
That's my truck.
As any builder, or as any builder would be.
Let's just build you an orange and white one. And he said, oh, okay. Polite. And then I went home, and that night, I don't think I slept at all. And as everybody knows, we're a small shop. It's me and Dylan and my wife, and so we spend a lot of time and a lot of our money into that truck, and and we've spent so much on that truck and push it as far as we can possibly push it. And that's how I felt that night, is that, man, everybody's going to get faster and technology's increasing so fast, and I'm tearing it apart every winter trying to get faster. How sustainable is that for me and the business and my family? We're spending all of our money trying to get that thing going. And I just thought to myself, man, that maybe the writing's on the wall, that somebody else needs to help, and that I need to help do it with somebody else. Sure. So I called Paul the next morning. I said, I have an idea.
I slept on it.
I have an idea. I would sell my truck to you.
Let's just pause right there for a second, because I want to bring in Paul a little bit on why you even have interest in a square body, in a C10, and in particular this truck.
I grew up farming and ranching. My granddad leased a place just right down the road from this branch. Having a farm life, so to speak, C10s were just a way of life back in the 70s and 80s. My uncle and cousin, they farmed also. They had C10s, and my cousin actually had a yellow and white long bed C10. It looked just like Jesse's, except it was long bed. But every time he'd get one new for the upcoming 2 or 3 years that he was going to be farming, he would immediately deck it out with wide tires, and white wheels were all the rage back in the 70s, and then a dual exhaust. And that to me personally, that yellow and white truck's just iconic. Of course, my dad's always had C10s. He's been a big GM Chevy guy for years, and he's since passed away, but it was just a way of life, so to speak. After following him and listening to his stories, then I saw your big interview with him on that truck. I said, I got to call him and chit chat about it, see if we could probably do something like that. And so that's kind of how that conversation evolved. And really, I felt like he and I just clicked in the conversation. You can't judge someone's personality through direct messages, but we clicked on the phone. We had the same interest, and I kind of hinted something about the yellow and white one, and he diverted that pretty quick. We talked about going through and rebuilding that truck and me sponsoring it, and really it turned into a really cool moment where he was explaining to me all the R&D's done on that truck and how it's progressed, and a lot of the pains and gains from it and learning. And so that story was kind of building on its own in my head. I thought, God, it would be so cool, because he's so passionate about that truck, to build that truck the way he wanted it built.
Absolutely.
And we started talking about it, and I said, this could be a cool deal. Yeah. He said, I could rebuild it, you could sponsor it, and then at the end of the year we can talk about the flipping the ownership over. But
sure.
The cool part about it is Jesse's going to get to build that truck the way he's always wanted to build it. Yeah. And get to race it the way he's always wanted to race it. That's going to be pretty neat to follow throughout this coming year for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about what's happening right now, why we're in Texas, and then talk about the plan for the year and what you guys are planning to do with the truck from a racing perspective.
And we had the conversation of, these are all the improvements that can be made. We're only going to have 3 months or so to rebuild the truck,
which is crazy to think about. 3 months.
Yeah.
So
that is just a very short
crunch time.
So Dylan and I have put this on the calendar. We're talking 6-day work weeks. I think we've got 40 days left to build the truck.
Wow.
And we're just now going to pick up the motor. You guys saw Rob helped us with an awesome chassis with independent rear suspension and all the goodies. We pulled that motor that was in the first video of us.
Yep.
It's a re-sleeved 5.3 liter that was an aluminum block. So they machined out all the cylinders and then pressed in ductile iron sleeves and then bored and stroked that. So this is a 450 cubic inch, or like a 7.3 liter, 12-to-1 compression.
We sent it to Don Hardy, and Don Hardy went back through that motor, freshened up everything to get it ready for this season. So now this motor is 446 cubic inches and 13-to-1 compression, dry sump motor. This should be a weapon.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're gonna put the same truck body on a new chassis with a fresh motor, and then Bowler got us a Sativ sequential 6-speed, and yeah, now we're in the process of putting it all together. But now that we got the motor, now we're going to go back, put the drivetrain in the truck, and get the cab on, put the fuel tank in, and really finish our mock-up.
I think the cool thing about it is that you have a really aggressive timeline, and regardless of your budget, it's really fun to see a truck built quickly. A lot of guys are trying to do that in their home garages. A lot of guys are trying to do that with other shops.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But I really feel like there's a solid plan in place for this truck.
There is. There's a lot of pre-planning that's been into this. You know, we've had a lot of help from, you know, Bowler or Don Hardy, and, you know, now since probably Halloween time, I mean, there's been constant work and planning.
Yeah.
You know, building the motor, or, man, giant wiring diagrams from Aaron at Karma. You know, we've been ordering the connectors we need for the wiring, or the power steering motor that we got in North Carolina. I mean, we've been all around the country and having a ton of conversations and planning this build so that it can come to fruition in April.
Well, it's coming to fruition.
Yeah.
It is now coming to fruition. So I think that we've sat here, we've watched the sun come up. I think it's time to go to Don Hardy and show everybody this motor.
Let's go.
Y'all want to do it?
I'm
Let's
ready.
hear it.
All right,
Sing.
Let's do this.
Let's do it.
Road trip.
We're leaving 3T Ranch, Abilene, Texas, and we're headed to Amarillo. It's like a 4-hour drive, so we're all driving separately so we can go our separate ways after that. But Don Hardy's shop, I believe, is in Floydada, but we're actually going to Amarillo, where we're gonna see this motor on the dyno. So, I'm just so excited to bring you guys this content. So y'all hang tight. We're gonna make this 4-hour trip real quick, and probably catch up with you in the parking lot, or at least inside the dyno facility. Either one, we'll see you there. PPE in Amarillo, Texas, and this is what we come to show you guys. Look at this thing. This is the motor that's going in the yellow and white truck. Man, we're super excited to tell you about it. So give me just a second. I'm gonna grab Don Hardy, grab Jesse. We'll tell you all about it. Jesse Vaughn from Level 7, Don Hardy from Don Hardy Race Engines.
So we're up here in Amarillo, and we're gonna witness that motor run today, hopefully.
Hopefully so.
Yeah. No, we shipped this motor up here. Gosh, it was probably end of the year, something like that, November or something. And we wanted him to freshen it up, and it's now 13-to-1 compression. It's fresh, and we're gonna run it and see what kind of power it makes now. Kind of break the motor in a little bit.
Changed the dry sump on it, did some machine work, got it all ready to go, fresh, and see what she does.
All right. Well, I'm ready with you guys, huh?
I guess this is where the torque curve was before the torque curve. Yeah. You can see where we were before in my learns.
Okay.
But it was all jacked up, man. Like it would, I think that ECU was on its way out. It would get right after it was nice and warm, and you'd go cold start it, and you'd be 40% off.
Some like these.
It would like swing 40% from hot to cold.
Ready to make some steam.
Yeah. Are you nervous, Jesse?
No,
You don't look nervous at all.
I didn't put the motor together.
You didn't put the motor together? Yeah, don't worry about it.
I feel a lot better today than we did Wednesday. So
Well, I think that's something we should touch on really quickly.
Yeah.
The ECU issue.
So he brought the motor over here Tuesday. Was gonna run it Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm on pins and needles waiting for him to call me. And they're like,
make him wait all day.
yeah. And then at 8 o'clock at night he says, "Is there a file in this ECU?" I said, "Well, yeah." And the ECU didn't work. That ECU's 5 or 6 years old. I've shipped it all over the place. I ripped the USB cord out of it last year.
Seen some better days.
Yeah, so we threw another Dominator in the truck and drove it here, so.
Now we're set. Just getting it full of fluid, full of water here, and fixing to set the fuel
355
pressure, and should be ready to fire up.
Got fuel pressure, no leaks.
I didn't see any leaks. Turn it back on again real quick. Be good.
Got the throttle pedal on?
Yeah.
Yep.
This is Don from PPE.
And we build anything from, I'd say, 400 horse 383 for your hot rod truck to a 1500 horsepower naturally aspirated big block. I mean, and anything in between. I'd say we probably do more naturally aspirated stuff than we do any kind of power adder. not much of what we do.
Sure. Thanks for all your time, man.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for the patience, letting me have all these cameras around. That's really cool.
No problem.
And Donald,
Thank you.
thank you, man.
You're welcome.
That's awesome.
Ready?
Yeah.
What's that?
Our comp's maxed out.
So
It was compensating on.
I just killed Jim Sharp.
Okay.
I thought when I cleaned that sensor board, I hadn't changed it yet,
But
but I wanted to see if it was going to
see
work.
if it was gonna go.
Closed loop was maxed out at 150. I just bumped it. It's at 200%. We're maxed out.
Outstanding.
This fuel map's way.
With that,
Because I had it set at like 56 pounds, 58 pounds. I mean, it's still 170 or 90% closed loop. I'm just gonna add like 25%.
It won't ever catch up. But are you sure? We got 18 inches past the oxygen sensor, don't we? Yeah. It's got the deal. You tell me when you want me to start it again.
We had the fuel trims that were pretty far off. You know, they had a hard time firing, and then you know, once the O2 would kick on, closed loop would go, like would max out. It was adding fuel. So we went in there and checked everything out, and number 8 plug never fired. So we're going to change the coil, and we're going to see if that works. If not, we'll change the coil harness, and we'll change the plug too. So we'll see if it's not ignition. Yep. The tricky thing here is that we've got custom push rod links because we've got short travel lifters. So they've got a window of preload that we need to hit. So if we've got one where the push rod is a hair too long, then that cylinder won't have compression. So if we don't get fire, we're going to check compression on that cylinder, make sure we don't have a valve that's open.
Sweet.
Yep.
Cross your fingers.
our exhaust push rod length was too long. So number 8 cylinder had no compression. He found about 20 thousandths too much preload on the lifter. So what we think is whenever we told Texas Speed that we wanted 13-to-1 compression, they changed not only the pistons, but they changed to a thinner head gasket, which makes our push rods too long. Luckily they had a set of push rods and we changed them. And yeah, I think we're good now.
Guarantee they put 10 or 15 thousandths thinner gasket on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you was, where they only got 30 thousandths anyway. And see, the thing is, you think, well, if they rolled it down to 10, that only gave you 10, and actually it was 20.
Right, it doubles.
The rocker ratio.
Yeah, the ratio. Or almost doubles, right?
Sure,
yeah. 1/7.
It's not 1 for 1.
It's 1/7.
Exactly.
Well, no, these are 1/8 now.
So it'll be almost 2 to 1?
Yeah, almost 2 to 1.
That's number 1 rule, I think, in engine building. You fire all 8
That's the
spark
golden
plugs.
rule.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter what you have after that.
Well, the other 2 sensors not on.
It's definitely better.
I guess
He said he's ready to try that. We're going to 5,000.
5,000.
That one on the ground. Guess would be here. Yeah. You don't get no sleep. I don't sleep now. That's right. That's how it was born, man. Well, I mean, kind of at school.
Oh yeah. But like out here in the real world. Like,
Yeah, like something with some actual power.
Yeah.
This was like,
And something that's like,
Well, it's only
critical.
1040, 1540. Anyway, any idea how much power it will make? It's 590 at 5,000.
I hope 700.
700.
That's what I hope for. What do you think? What do you hope this is going to be, Karen?
440 something inches, 13 and a half to 1. That makes 700.
You said if it doesn't make over 700. Yeah. You said if it doesn't make over 700, we need to dig in the dumpster here. Because of this.
I've had a few dumpster fires before.
Let's go. Well, that's a real milkshake, isn't it? That is young.
Hey, can you pour some in there?
Yeah, man. I'm like, dude, right now I need anything on my bones.
I was going to get one for you. He said no, it'll be heartburn.
Make it through that point. Well, see, I ate the In-N-Out burger and we went out to Pomona for the race.
I'm going to let you tell him that's all right.
And then after that, every time I've eaten hadn't been the same.
I don't think there's good.
Yeah.
How you gonna eat that? But please go.
Yeah.
We're back. Does anybody else want some before I, drink out of it?
No, I'll probably get one at Chick-fil-A.
Ooh, I'll tell you, Chick-fil-A good. They want to take you as seriously because you have to
Okay.
check all of your
All right. Couple times while you're on the.
flavor.
Okay.
Call it flavor saver, but paintbrush, whatever.
Okay. Sounds good.
One of my guys had one of those just
We'll
right
do it.
here.
I'll give him that.
Scott, that flavor saver going. Got a fun last time where you can taste that later. And you go, take my man. and
So
go,
when we were at like 5,000.
no.
He probably did not expect that coming from you either, I'm sure.
Yeah.
This is good.
We've been running it. You're gonna run it.
Okay. She's got to stay in here a
Getting
little bit.
started, really.
Are you ready here? Okay. He's ready.
Yeah, that line was long, the water break. There was a few people behind me that ordered it didn't last. And I was thinking, I'm gonna get here for
I told him to come back with a sack full of burgers. He let us down.
TV, you just see them go, yeah, for 700.
Yeah, this ain't TV. This is the real. That's how it actually happens. So I've never seen it done.
Yep.
It's a process.
Would you say that's made 691?
684.
680.
But I mean, it's not, we're pulling it so low. It's, I mean, we need to start the pull about 5 and end about 7,500 the way it looks like. 55. It makes peak torque at 5,600.
Okay.
So it's going to run at least.
He said it makes peak torque at
above that.
5,600.
You said 2,000 more down to get peak horsepower.
Yeah, normally 1,500 to 2,000 above peak torque. Depends on how wide a power band it has.
What's he saying?
No, I'm like, this is good stuff.
Say what? What did he say?
Oh, it just, I was saying we're pulling it so low. I mean, it's really, it's just now coming on the pipe as it pulls engine. So made peak torque at 57 or 800.
You know what we want
So
is
it's probably going to run to 7,500 peak for the peak power.
That was the whole goal.
If the valve train stayed over.
Highest power.
It makes 607 foot-pounds from 5,000 to 6,000, give or take 2 or 3 foot-pounds. So it's flat. I mean, it's just up high.
Get rolling.
Must be a big cylinder head and a lot of valve area and a big camshaft. That power number is pretty good. At this point, I would say it's going to make 725 or better. Do you have any idea, low number, when you race the truck, what the low number is? RPM? No idea. I think a lot of times, like in our circle track stuff, that low number is more important than the high number, where your lowest speed. You know what I mean? We try a certain number that we want, like a sprint car.
Yeah, it'll always be above 5,800.
Yeah, see, there you go, that's good.
So like our trans is 6 speed and it's a 310 first and then it's 6 gears 1-to-1. So
We got lots of racing.
Yeah, we only dropped a little bit.
The guys that are fast pay attention to the low number. I never want to blow 6,000, you know, or whatever their number is.
Yeah, it was. It was almost 7,400. What did it make there? Did you see?
704.
704. But
it's got a whip in it.
No, it ain't going in the dumpster. But it dropped power once we got 6,500 and then picked it back up. But that's because we've got that timing pull on the table. When did it dip? About 65,
yep.
64?
62 or 300.
62 or 300.
It went backwards and it came back.
And then it came back up.
It only dropped 5 horsepower.
Okay, he's ready.
It's all 720.
And that'll do it, folks.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Woo! Made 31, but we just cooled the water temperature off 50 degrees.
I sure will. Yeah, absolutely. Good. All right, thanks.
Made 731, but we cooled the water temperature off 50 degrees, so that's what.
Let's try it again.
The best. God dang, when are you going to quit that?
How did that sound? That sounds awesome. Shaking.
What'd it do?
730. Back to back.
730 back to back. What did it do? You know about torque?
Yeah, 618 peak torque, 613 at 6,000.
Sweet.
We're done.
I'm looking. Go ahead, Don.
So you're gonna lose about.
I mean, sometimes when you load the engine so hard, a lot of times I'll throw those first couple numbers away. But here it gets flat. I mean, that's a peak. That's a real number here. This right here. And sometimes you can throw away these. When a dyno tries to grab the engine again to stop it at our peak number, sometimes you can throw those numbers away. So like when I average something, I'll throw away those first two numbers. Let's average it from 54 to 7,000. And that's a real number.
Sweet.
So 697 horsepower, 592 foot-pound of torque average from 5,400 to 7,000. 5,400 to 7,100 at average, 699 horsepower and 589 torque.
That's on average. I mean, that is
average.
So I'm gonna celebrate.
Do it.
I'm Jesse, by the way. I think Jack. Jack.
I'm Robbie, by the way.
Jack.
Well, these guys are drinking cold beers, so that means something good happened. Or something bad, you got to drink cold beer anyway.
We came in here, fired it up. We thought we had an O2 sensor problem, but what we had was a loss of compression. And I think I covered this a minute ago, but what we ran into was that when TechSpeed put that bottom end together and they changed the pistons, they also changed the thickness of the head gaskets. And with those Johnson short travel lifters, we've got 30 thousandths of preload, plus or minus 10. So the window of preload and push rod length is tight. So our push rods were too long. Changed all the push rods. Air fuels are fine. O2 sensors are working fine. Aaron from Karma Performance remote logged into the laptop, and he helped do the runs with Don and Donald. And we run it up to about 7,500, 7,600, and it made 730 horsepower at 7,100 RPM. I mean, at 7,300, it was still above 720. And then it made 618 peak torque, but even at 6,000, just below peak, it was at 613 foot-pounds of torque. So we're at the tires, you know, it's gonna make, I don't know, 620, 625.
Sweet.
Yeah, you know. And the timing is not wild. The timing is at 27 degrees, all in at the very top. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, and I don't think we've touched on this, but what fuel, what octane are we using in there?
That's 105. We're gonna pre-mix 93 and 110.
93 and 110.
So we'll probably be around the 102, 103 octane, something like that. This is a big day.
Success, bro.
Huge success. Huge shout outs. We need to do shout outs.
Paul, you feeling good?
Feeling good.
Sorry, I was gonna make sure I had that backed off of you. Let's do some shout outs.
I gotta thank Paul
Yeah,
for the milkshake.
absolutely.
It was fantastic.
You mean you gotta thank me because I gave you part of my milkshake that Paul bought me?
True. Aaron from Karma Performance really came in the clutch here. Logged into my computer after hours, whipped
On a
up
Friday.
on the tune. Yeah, on a Friday. His girlfriend was sitting in the office waiting on him to get done. So huge thanks to him. And PPE here in where are we at?
We're in Amarillo.
Amarillo.
We're in
We're in
Amarillo.
Texas. Don did an awesome job running the dyno.
Yeah,
And John Hardy, he put the motor together for us this time real well.
Oh yeah.
He's good. Turn around, see, look at him working in there.
That's Donald Hardy right there. Getting it done. Getting it done. I think these boys had a long day.